Thank you, Jess. Hello, everyone. My name is Gabriel Martins. I am currently part of the Stefanini North America AI and Machine Learning Research and Development team. I was also part of the R&D team at Whoopee and helped implement Sophie versions 1, 2, and 3. That is why I was here today to give you some technical insight into Sophie and how to leverage her integration layer. Now, one of the most important features of a good virtual assistant is the ability to integrate with a large gamut of online services. In the latest version of Sophie, version 4, this layer is better than ever. Today, we have seen Sujoy talk about the SAP integrations. Many have mentioned other ITO integrations like ServiceNow. But instead of showing some more demos, I'd like to show you a bit of the inner workings and how does someone create an integration with Sophie. First, you need to have access to a Sophie instance, which I do, and I should be sharing my screen right now. And so I'm going to log in. Give it a second. Hopefully Sophie's not down. Okay. All right. So this is where we're going to create a rule later on. It basically defines how to trigger the integration and how should Sophie interact with the end user. We've seen, I'm going to head over to services and integrations. And this is where the magic happens. So currently we accept 3 types of integrations, 3 types of formats. So one is the DLL, which is compile.NET code. And the second one is XPDL, in case you want to use Visagi's business process modeling tool. The third type is JSON, which is the easiest format to understand. The idea behind it is very simple. You define an HTTP request using a simple JSON format, and it does exactly, Sophie will run exactly that, that request once the user requested. Since I only have 15 minutes for this presentation, I already found a simple online service that I want to integrate Sophie with, and I'll show you the JSON definition and the API documentation side by side so you can understand where the parameters coming from. Okay, so let's have a look at this news integration. Right. So first, you need to give it a name. And this is what you're going to reference once we get into the rules. And then you need to select the remote. This is where the integration should run. Sophie has a technology we call remote dynamic services for interfacing with services that run on our client's private network. Many clients choose to maintain some of their services accessible only from within the company network. And with this technology, you can safely integrate with the services without needing a VPN or asking them to expose their services. In this case, the API is public, so we can let it run locally wherever Sophie is right now on the cloud. The last step is the JSON itself. And this interface right here provides some IDE functionalities to make sure that JSON syntax is correct. Like you can try to add a new property here. But if you don't add the comma at the end of the line, it's going to tell you, see, expected a comma. So you can fix that. Or if you have a semicolon instead of a colon, it'll tell you so as well. So you got some help there. Also, when you create a new integration, it'll come with all of the properties by default, right? So I just clicked on Add JSON Integration, and we have all the parameters here. Now, you'll only use some of these properties on very edge cases that you need a very complex integration, which is not the case. So we can go ahead and delete those if we're not using them, just for cleanliness. So that's why we only have 5 properties here. And these are the basic required properties that we always need to have. So the URL, basically, where is the service? The type of the HTTP request, if it's GET or POST, or we support any method, really. And then the response, which is what should Sophie do once the API responds to Sophie. We have the headers in case the API needs headers. And then we have error rule. So this property error rule is basically where should Sophie redirect the conversation in case the API call fails. So for example, the API can be down or in maintenance. It can just be otherwise inaccessible. And in that case, you want to keep the conversation flowing with the user, maybe even suggest opening up a ticket about the API not working. So in that case, you redirect that to a different flow that you would define in the rules later on as well. In this case, we are using AutoDout, which is a default flow that always exists within Sophie, since this is just a test and we don't expect it to fail. Hopefully it won't. Okay, so now you might be wondering, where does these information come from? You know, the URL, the type, where do I get this information from? So I'm gonna walk you through the process that I went through, literally, and hopefully it'll demystify some of these questions, right? So what I did is I started by going to Google and I searched for cool free API. Yeah, so and that got me to this page right here, apilist.fun. And what I did is I just skimmed through the categories. I was interested in news when I saw it, so I just came up here and searched for news. Now we see some different APIs here. I like the first one because it's not from a single source. I want just news in general. So let's go into that. There's a short description here, but I want to go to the API documentation. That's the main important part if you're doing an integration. Okay, so this got me to newsapi.org, which looks like it's the main page for the API service. And it looks like immediately we have some samples here, some examples of how to call the API, the response, and what is it doing. We also have a button right here to get an API key. I can already see here that the requests do require this API key. And just a quick sidebar here. A lot of internet services require you to have some kind of identifying code to use their services, even if they are free. That helps them keep track of analytics and other things like that. So we need to get one of those. So let's go ahead and click Get API Key. And in this case, I already have an account, so I'm going to log out and then click this again. So you would just register here. If this is a free API, you don't need to set up a credit card or anything. Just fill it up. And then once you're done, you should get this page, which is your account page. I already see the API key here, which is what we need. There's also some analytics here if you want that. I just want the API key, so I copy that. Okay, now we're back here. Now let's see if we can use one of these samples, right? So the first one is all articles about Bitcoin from last month sorted by recent first. Very specific about Bitcoin. I don't really care about Bitcoin. So let's see the next one, top business headlines in the US right now. I like this one, so I'll go ahead and grab the URL, which is the first property that we need for the integration. And maybe you have noticed that the API key here is already mine because I'm logged in. So the website already replaced it with my own API key. This is very nice, but it's going to vary from API to API. So you might have to do this manually in some other service. So, but you would just replace this part with your own API key. So let's copy this thing. Let's go over here. Let's replace here. All right. So we also need the type. So let's see the type. I see the type right here. It's a GET request. So let's copy that to. Okay, and now we have the response, right? So like I said, it's what should Sophie do with the response? So let's take a look at the response here. So this is the sample that he gives us. We can see that it's a JSON object, which is great. That's what we want. There's 3 properties here: status, total results, 70, and OK, and articles. So 70 articles looks like a lot. So maybe I don't want to grab all of those. Maybe I just want 5 to not overwhelm the user. And then the articles property looks like it's a list with all the different objects. So looks like, yeah. So let's grab the top 5. Then I see we have a title. We have a link that should be the link to the article. And then we also have URL to image, which, yeah, it looks like it's a thumbnail. So let's use all of those. So let's have the title linked to the article, and then let's have the thumbnail on the bottom as well. So that's what I did here. And so keep in mind that in this response that we configure here, we have access to all of the editorial commands that you have access to in the rules, right? So the same knowledge you can implement here, all of the commands that Sophie has. If you're not familiar with those, we have videos on this channel, this YouTube channel, about some of these commands. You can also find documentation about it. So it shouldn't be a big problem. So this is how we grab the first 5 results, right? We want the 0 through 5 instances in that list. And then for each article, we want to create a new line. So this is the command to create a new line. Then we want to create a link, like we said. And the label should be the title. And the URL, once you click it, should be the URL of the article. Then we want another new line, and then we want the thumbnail, which is an image command. And the URL of the image is URL to image. So all of the properties, you can just see it here. You can just copy and paste over there. No problem. Okay, so it looks like it's formatted the way I want it. Like I said, in this case, we don't need any headers. It doesn't mention anything like that here. And like I said, the error rule is the default one. So let's go ahead and save this. Let's publish. Very important to publish. So these modules of Sophie are separated. This is the knowledge manager where you manage the integrations and the rules. And the server actually running Sophie's mine is a different server. So you can mess around with the rules and things like that all you want. It'll only actually go into production once you publish it. Okay, so we have the integration published. Now, with just the integration, there's not going to be much use to it because there's nothing calling this integration. Sophie doesn't know when to trigger this integration. And that's where the rules come in. So let's go back to the rules. And again, because we have a low amount of time, I already pre-created one rule, but we'll talk about it real quick. So it's very simple. Once you create the button up top to create a new rule, you'll get a screen just like this one. You don't even need to fill up the label. Just create a name for the rule. And then you also are going to need at least one question and at least one answer. And the questions are basically hypothetical questions that users would use to trigger this rule, right? And it's important to keep in mind that you don't need, these are not the exact words that the user has to use to trigger the rule, right? So these are just examples, because Sophie, after we publish this rule, Sophie will dissect these questions and understand the intention behind them. And the rule trigger will be associated with the intention and not the actual phrases themselves. So you don't need to worry about that. Just have one or a couple of examples. It should be just fine. So we have your get news headlines. What are the news? And then answers. So in this case, a lot of the formatting is already in the integration. So right here, we're just going to have here the headlines, colon, and then we'll call the integration. You don't need to know exactly how to call the integration, because here, when you're creating rules, you have this little tool here to help you create the commands. So you can just click that button, then you select one of the Sophie's commands. In this case, we want to call an integration. So we want S integration right here. And so all the integrations that you have saved, it'll be on this drop-down list here. So just make sure you remember the name, and you will be able to find it here. Just do OK, and it will create the command for you. Also, quick side note, if you need some help creating the response for the integration, you can also use this tool here to create. You can see, how the commands are written, and you can copy and paste it in the integration. Okay, so let's add this, save, and publish. Okay, now we have the integration, we have the rule, now we are ready to test. Also, another great feature of the Knowledge Manager is that we have this little window into Sophie Assistant right inside this page. So it makes it very easy to test. So I'm just coming in. Apparently my name is Test. So let's write something like, hey Sophie, can you fetch me some news? And then it should trigger the rule, which consequently will trigger the integration. And a quick side note about, you saw that it took a little time to process the integration and respond. So one of the improvements that you can make in the editorial, for example, is to have the response segmented, so that you have one response where you say something like, okay, so I'm going to start processing the request. Give me a second. I'll go get the news. And then you'll have the 3 dots loading, and then you can have the response if you know the integration can take a little bit of time. So that's one improvement that you can make. Anyway, we got the response here. Here, the headlines. We see the title here with the hyperlink to the news. Looks like maybe this one doesn't have a thumbnail. And then we have another one. Yeah, so let's see if we have 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 news. Yeah, so that's exactly what we configured. So yeah, like I said, there are many improvements that you can make on top of this editorially. So, and with all of the other people that talked before me, we talked about how important it is to be user-centric and all of that. So we want to make sure the editorial part is very good as well. But the integration part is very simple, as you can see. It's just detailing all of the properties that you will find in the documentation, just detailing them on a JSON format, and Sophie will take care of doing all of the code behind the scenes to actually call the the integration and presented the data in the format that you want. And of course, there are integrations that are going to be harder, more complicated than this. Like I mentioned before, there's people talked about integrating with SAP and ServiceNow, for example. And these are big online services, and they have lots of different little tasks that you want to do inside there. You want to create a ticket, you want to delete a ticket, you want to modify a ticket, you want to change a parameter, you want to close the ticket list. So all of these different functionalities, you can just break them down into different integrations, and following their documentation, you can just create lots of these little integrations, and with the rules, you can link them as you need them. So that's how you develop a large and robust integration between Sophie and, like, for example, ServiceNow. It's just lots of these little simple integrations. Anyway, so it looks like I'm already stepping over my time. So let me hand it back to the host and see if there are any quick questions before the break. I think you're muted, Alex.
I was muted. Yes. Hello, Gabriel. How are you?
Hello. Doing good.
I have a couple of questions to you.
Sure.
One of them is I noticed that you have used just one training phrase instead of the 20 or 30 that you would normally need for traditional neural network based application. Why is that?
Yeah, so, like I went in about it a little bit. The idea here is connecting the rule to the intention behind the conversation that the user is having with you. So you don't necessarily want to tie it to specific words because words are just not flexible enough. If I change get, like, for example, I put get in here, but then when I was talking to Sophie, I used fetch. But because of Sophie's mind and all of the different concepts that she understands, we don't need to tell her that get is similar to fetch, and because
it's there already.
Yeah, it's there already, and so this basic stuff you don't need to teach her. So just the overall concept of what you want to do, that's the only thing you need to teach her, and she grabs that very quickly just from a few examples. You can, most of the time we have one example, so and it works just fine.
Which over time, I mean, when it comes to 1,000 intentions, it makes a lot of difference. Another question to you, I mean, you have led some, major implementations and projects in US, and in some of them, when we got to the client, we were not seen initially as a serious contender because we don't have that a big name, although we are gaining respectability in this AI field. What do you think would be the main differences between Sophie and the other platforms in the market when it comes to those clients deciding for us?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So I think clients are so used to, well, I think us in general, even the public, are very used to, seeing like Siri from Apple, seeing Alexa from Amazon, and it's just these such huge names that are so present in our day-to-day, like everyone knows them. So once they hear Sophie and they don't immediately recall like seeing it in their day-to-day, they might be a little prejudiced towards it. But I think the angle we got to tackle is that, though these are different types of AIs with different purposes. Our AI, Sophie, is here to solve problems, right? So it's a real world solution to enterprise problems. And we have a realistic approach to how we implement artificial intelligence and how we tackle these solutions. So, like I think you mentioned before as well, it's, or Fabio mentioned it as well, it's unrealistic to ask a client to, hey, can you come up with 1,000 different examples of this one phrase here just to trigger this one integration for me, and then do that again another 100 times for other rules and
for the next rule.
Yeah, it's unrealistic. And so we have a solution that you can me by myself, I could contract Sophie and create it in a few days. I can have a big database with various integrations with services that nobody has integrated by default. It's easy to say, oh, we're integrated with ServiceNow because it's such a big company and everybody has pre-built integrations. But if you need an integration with this little unknown service that only you will use, now some companies will see that as a problem. Oh, we don't have that integration by default. This will, take us development time. And in our case, you can just go in and in 5-10 minutes, you can create an integration. So the way we handle usability and how realistic we are with the lengths you need to go to set up things, make it so much easier to use and so much more, in my opinion, a better option for enterprises and companies.
Fantastic. That's the market we are trying to lead. I mean, great talk, great presentation. Thank you. Let's make room to Jander so next with the latest and newest breakthroughs in Sophie's brain. Thank you, Gabriel.
Thank you, Alex.